are well if you are watching this on catch up. If you haven't watched one of my tutorials before, I'm Rosie. I am Head of Floral Design at the Wedding Academy. Yeah, I hope everyone's okay. Sorry, because I think that cut me off just as I was saying hello. But yeah, thank you for watching this back on replay. So this evening we are going to be speaking about where to buy your flowers from. If you have done all of the tutorials in the flower course, then you probably would have come to the handout at the end of the course, which actually talks you through where it's best to, well, your options with regards to where you can get your flowers from. If you haven't made it there yet, then there is a tutorial and a handout at the end of the course. But I'm going to speak about where I order my flowers from, and I'm also going to walk you through one of the platforms that I use. So I do apologise, I keep sort of looking over to the other side of the screen. It's because I've got I've got the handout to the side, which I'm going to be going through because I wrote that anyway. So I'm just going to be reading some of the bits off of there, and then we will go through the platform that I use. So if you haven't already, it's probably a really good idea to invest in some flower books. So there actually used to be an app available in the UK called the Flower Book. I've still got it on my phone. Let me see if I can show you. But I have tried to find it on the App Store since having this. I don't know if you can see. And I can't find it, so I don't know if that's just because I've already got it installed on my phone that it's not coming up on the App Store. I've got an iPhone, by the way, or whether it's just not available anymore. But this is a really handy app if you can download it. Let me see if I can just find. So at the bottom it's got like a search option. So let's just put in there, for example, carnation. So I've just clicked on one randomly, and then it will actually show you there the sort of availability. So that's showing as amber like throughout the year. So obviously that's saying that there is like a chance that potentially you might not be able to actually get that rose. It'd be hard, carnation, it would be harder to might be harder to source, whereas that one, for example, is showing as green throughout the whole entire year. So therefore you know that that's quite a good one to rely on, because it's probably going to be available and of good quality for the whole year. So I really would advise having a look on your app store and seeing if you can download this app. However, if it's not available, then I really would suggest just investing in some flower books, because they will show you the availability of all of the flowers, just very similar to the app. Obviously, it's really handy to just be able to pick up your phone and have a look if possible. But the books are a really good place to start if, of course, you can't download the app. The other option is, I mean, if you have a specific flower that you know you want to work with, you can of course just put it into Google and ask for the availability, and it will show you on Google the availability of that flower. However, one of my biggest bits of advice is don't promise brides specific flowers. So generally when I have my consultation calls with my brides, I will always ask them, are there any flowers that they really want included? Are there any flowers that they really don't want included? And then I will say, like, so for example, a lot of brides don't actually even know what flowers they want. They've seen like inspiration images on Pinterest or your Instagram, but they don't know the names of flowers, which to be honest is really quite helpful, because you don't really want anyone being like ultra specific, because it does make your job harder. However, what I always say is I will always aim to provide like a requested flower. However, if I'm unable to source it, I will provide an alternative that looks very similar. So just for example, peonies are frequently requested. Not necessarily because brides actually even love them, but I think it's just because peonies are a very well-known sort of flower associated with weddings. So I think brides always say they want peonies because they think that they should. However, I always explain that actually there's hundreds and hundreds of variations of garden roses, and some look very similar to peonies, and they are a lot more reliable. So I'll be honest, I absolutely never use peonies in my weddings, just because personally I find them quite unreliable, and you have to get them just right. So peonies arrive really, really tight-headed, like really tight, like literally ball, and they need a good drink, and they need a good couple of days dependent on like heat to actually open and be like in their best form. So I would say really and truly they need like 3 days at the least to like open like really well. Obviously if it's hot, if it's like the height of summer, or you live in a hot country, then they're going to open a lot quicker. So I'm talking about 3 days in the UK, on a, you know, not a particularly hot day. Whereas generally I always get my flowers 2 days in advance of a wedding. So for me, if I was to order peonies, they probably wouldn't even be in the best form on the wedding day, and I just can't rely on that. Like I can't work with that. So I would always opt for a garden rose, and I'd always try and steer my bride in the direction of a garden rose, just because I'm so confident with using them. I know which ones like work really well, and colour wise, like you have so much variation and option. And as I say, some look so similar to peonies, and I can guarantee that if you didn't sort of educate your brides on the fact that you was going to use a garden rose, they probably wouldn't know anyway. But I wouldn't advise that. I would always be open and honest with your bride, or couple, sorry. But yeah, I would always opt to use a garden rose. But again, so going back, I don't promise specific flowers. I just say that I will do my best to source what they want, but it will always be like the same colour and the same style. And I also have that in my terms and conditions. So obviously it's really important to state that, because what you don't want to do is have like a conversation and say that you'll definitely source a specific flower, and then the bride couple be really disappointed if you didn't actually use that flower and you hadn't included that in your terms and conditions. So yeah, make sure that you've got that in there. When it comes to ordering, you might use like a common name for a flower, and on the wholesalers like website, if that's what you're going to use, it might not bring that up as a result, because a lot of wholesaler websites actually go by like the Latin name. So for example, I've said carnation and I showed you a carnation on my phone, and that's what I'm sure like you and I would call it, most florists would. However, when you're searching that on the wholesaler website, it doesn't always come up, because that's the common name and the Latin name is dianthus. So again, a quick Google will tell you the Latin name. So if you can't find a flower that you're after, it might just be it's because you're searching with a common name and not a Latin name. So again, the flower books are really, really useful, because they will have all the common names and all the Latin names like listed under pictures as well, so you can refer back to it. So when you're just getting started, they are really, really useful. So obviously you've got options when it comes to ordering your flowers. You've got ordering from a wholesaler online. And when I say about an online wholesaler, I'm generally talking about direct to the Dutch auction. So flowers obviously do come from all over the world. However, a large quantity of the flowers do come from Holland. A lot of flowers are grown in Holland. So I order directly on the Dutch websites. Now I do that because I find it the most efficient way to order my flowers. So you can go to a wholesaler based where you are. However, they are ordering directly from the Dutch auctions. So of course they are going to price up everything. So you're going to pay a lot more money if you go to one of these wholesalers based like locally to you, rather than directly on the Dutch auction. It can be a little bit daunting, it can be a little bit confusing when you first look at it. And generally you won't be able to look at a Dutch auction until you have had a walkthrough with a member of staff that works for that company. And the reason for that is because if you accidentally place items into your basket, it's really hard to revoke the items. So if you purchase something accidentally, generally you have to buy it. And most of the websites actually have a minimum spend. So I primarily use two. The ones I use are called Florist and Hoke. And both of them have a £200 minimum spend, or they have like a £50 delivery fee if you don't hit that £200. What I would always say is if you have a really small wedding, it might be more cost effective to go to like your local wholesaler rather than ordering online if you don't think you're going to hit that £200 spend. However, for example, like where I've just needed something extra, so say like around Christmas, for example, like where I do like workshops and I need to order extra foliage or something, and I think, oh gosh, I'm actually not going to spend £200. What I generally do is I bolster up my order with materials that I know that I will use. So it might be wires, ribbons, foam, or like dried materials, which I know are obviously not fresh. It doesn't matter that I don't need them now, but I'm just adding them to my order so I can actually meet that minimum spend. So that is a really good tip when it comes to ordering online. So you've got direct to the Dutch auctions, you've got your local wholesalers. It's also key to note that with the Dutch auctions, they will require you to prove that you are a business, because they don't want just like members of the public who, you know, maybe might only place one order, I suppose, signing up and then not using the website again. So that's why you will need to prove that you are a business, whereas the local wholesalers, I mean, I can only speak for the one local to me. Actually, where I used to live as well, it was the same. So so I've been to two local ones, and both of them allow members of the public to go in and to purchase flowers. So you don't need to prove that you are a business. However, they are more expensive because they're obviously marking up the produce that they are ordering from the Dutch auctions. Okay, so you've got those two options. You've also got a flower farm. Now, local to me, there are a few. I mean, I think there are websites actually which you can go on, which actually most flower farmers will probably all be signed up to, so that they advertise their location. So you can go on there and you can have a look at where your nearest flower farm is. Just bear in mind that obviously the quantity of flowers that they have is not going to be nowhere near the quantities that you're going to obviously be able to select from on the from wholesalers. Also, the quality, potentially dependent on what country you live in, may not be as good. So I mean, I personally don't use flower farms. However, I know a lot of florists that do. And there's numerous reasons as to why you may opt or opt not to use a flower farm. I have had a couple of couples make inquiries with me who have been quite into sustainability and eco-friendly flowers. And they have sort of questioned me as to where I get my flowers from. And you know, they would prefer a florist that does actually shop, you know, with UK based flowers and flower farmers. So you may find that some brides or couples might be more interested in that. So it's good to know where your local flower farmers are, because then you can always say to your couples, I just be honest with them. And that's exactly what I did. I said, look, I don't usually use flower farmers. This is where I get my flowers from. However, if it's really important to you, then of course I can. But generally, as I say, there are a lot of florists that specialise in being a lot more sustainable and eco-friendly. So it might be that your couple decide to go with a different florist anyway, but it's good to know where your local flower farmers are. And also, they will probably sell to you a lot lower quantity. So for example, on the auctions, the quantities of stems can really range from like 10 to 200 stems. However, you could probably go to a flower farm and just go, oh, I'm running really short, I just need 5 or 10. And you would be able to pick that from them. So they are really good for that. So yeah, so it's really important to know that a lot of the flowers come in different quantities. And when you're first starting out, if you're looking on like one of these Dutch auction wholesalers, it can be really confusing. It can also be a really, really costly mistake if you order too much, because as I say, once you've added it to your basket, you can't revoke it, or you might get like 5 minutes to remove it. And if them flowers are like on a special offer, or they're on sale, they will literally go straight to your checkout and you can't remove them. So yeah, be really, really careful. All of the flowers will be graded a certain quality, so it's really important that you understand the different types of grades. So for example, A1 is the top tier of flower that you can buy. So I will only ever use A1 flowers like within my wedding designs. And I will always choose like you know, like a higher quality of rose, for example, like for my bridal bouquet, whereas I might choose like a less expensive rose for the bridesmaids or for table designs. But I will always use an A1 flower. The only time I would go down and use an A2 or a less expensive flower would be if the wedding guests or my couple were not actually seeing the flowers close up. So say for example it was like a big installation, a big arch, or it was like hanging flowers, where nobody would be able to actually get really close to them and see the quality. I might decide to use a cheaper flower for that, because there wouldn't be any specific need for them to be like top tier grade A1 flowers. The flower prices will really vary dependent on the grading. Also, the length of the stem. So for example, say you're using an avalanche rose in a bridesmaid bouquet, and you're also using an avalanche rose in your table centerpiece, but your table centerpiece is a garland, for example, so you don't need a long stem on that at all. What I would advise you do is buy buy enough roses for your bouquets in one length, and then buy the other amount of roses that you need for your tables in a separate length, because you're going to be cutting the stem off anyway. So there's no point, because it might be this like a 10p difference on each stem. So there's no point buying 100 roses where you're going to cut all the stems off at a higher price, where you can actually get them cheaper with a lower with a shorter stem. So always consider that and check the lengths, and I'll show you when we go on the platform that they will actually have that on there. So foliage is really tricky when ordering online, especially when you're first getting your head around it, because not a lot of the wholesalers actually specify the amount of like stems that come in the bunch. It's all done on weight, so that can be quite hard to sort of work out. But what I will say is generally foliage will sort of probably range from like 20p, 40p up to like £1.50 per stem, depending on what type of foliage that it is that you're going for. So you can probably sort of work out the amount of stems that you're going to be getting in a bunch based on the total price that it advertises. But it is really confusing, so just be really careful when you are first ordering foliage, because that can be a really costly mistake if you order too much. However, foliage does last really well, so like I've ordered it sometimes and then I've had it like 2 weeks later for another wedding. So of course it depends what you're using it for, but if I was going to put that into an arch or a big installation piece or like a garland where I could then incorporate other fresher foliage and flowers into it, nobody would actually notice that it's a little bit older, as long as of course you're looking after it well, changing the water. But what I will always advise with when working out how much you need, especially when it's like a really large wedding, is to work out how much product you need for one arrangement first, or 1 foot of a garland, for example, and then multiply it. I do speak to so many florists that get really like confused and over order their flowers. But if you're working it out per arrangement, there really isn't a reason why you should be like completely over ordering. It's always good to have some spare in case flowers get broken. But if you're being left with like 20 plus flowers, then of course that's not great, because that's money. If you have a shop or you make gift bouquets and you're able to use them, then great. But for me, as a sole wedding florist, if I have flowers left over after a wedding, then they do just go in my house, which is lovely, but that's costing me. So you have got to be really savvy when it comes to ordering your flowers. Right, okay, so let me just quickly have a look what else is on this handout. So another reason that I actually really like to order directly online is because you're in full control then of looking through all of the flowers, choosing the colours, choosing the variation and the quality. Whereas you could go to your local wholesaler and you could tell them what you was after, but then you are putting your trust in them that they are going to get it right. So I would always feel a lot more confident just knowing that I've picked them myself. Also, ordering online, they come directly to me, so I haven't got to go anywhere. So they arrive directly at my studio, and then I can just get cracking with the conditioning. So if you go to a local wholesaler, or you go to Covent Garden, for example, in London, you are responsible for obviously transporting those flowers back to wherever you're going to work on them. So you need to make sure that you've got enough room in your car, your van, to get them all there. Also, when you go to those places, they don't come in boxes, so they will come wrapped up in like cellophane wrapping that you would get like at a supermarket. They don't come in water. So you'd probably have to take a load of buckets with you, whereas when you order online they come so tightly compact within boxes. I actually think they're a lot more safer as well, because where they're all so compacted, they're less likely to get damaged. So as I said earlier, for a wedding, I always order my flowers 2 days in advance of the event. This has always been enough time for my flowers. Generally, obviously, as I said, I know which ones I like to work with, and which ones I'm confident in sort of like performing well. But 2 days is enough for them to have a really good drink and to open up really nicely. If, for example, I had a really foliage heavy wedding, then you can, of course, order your foliage a lot further in advance. As I said, sometimes I've had foliage for like a couple of weeks that I've like used on a wedding. So you can order that in advance. I would say maybe like a week in advance, and then you could get a lot of your arrangements pre-made, that then you just need to add the flowers into. So that's a really good tip if you've got a really big wedding, because then it just saves like so much work like the day before the wedding. So when your flowers come, if you do order them from a Dutch auction, as I said, they'll come in a large cardboard box, and they will either come wrapped up in a cellophane like plastic sleeve, or they will come in like brown paper. So not a lot of flowers ever come in water. Some do. If they're really, really delicate, then they will be delivered in water. But generally, flowers don't come in water. So it's your job to obviously condition them as soon as possible once they get delivered. So by conditioning, you need to unpack every stem, and then you need to cut every stem diagonally. And the reason we cut flowers diagonally is so that they're at an angle, and then they are not sitting flat against the bottom of the bucket, because it would make it a lot harder for the water to go up the stem. So when they're like that, the water can go up a lot more easier. So that's why it's really important to make sure that we cut them at an angle. You need to also ensure that all foliage and thorns are removed, which will be below the water level. This is because any foliage or thorns that are under the water will actually cause bacteria in the water, and then that could damage or kill your flowers. So it's really important to remove that. How much you remove is up to you, and it's sort of based on the design that you're doing as well. So if you're doing if you're going to say like roses, for example, if you're going to be adding them roses into quite a foliage heavy design, I would say leave as much foliage on the rose as you can, because then that's going to bolster out your arrangement. So yeah, it's always best to think ahead in terms of what you're actually going to be using those flowers for. So you're not wasting loads of time removing all the foliage, when actually it would have been quite useful to leave it on. So you might have seen or been told that you should be using flower food with when you condition your flowers. This is a entirely personal choice. I have never used flower food. I always just use just fresh water. I don't add anything to my water. And as I say, because my flowers are generally, so they'll come 2 days ahead of an event. They'll be conditioned, they'll be in the water, and they'll be conditioned for a day. And then obviously the day after, I actually generally start working with them. So they're not sat in the water that long, really. So yeah, I wouldn't waste your money on flower food, but of course, when you're first starting, or if you would feel more confident doing so, then that is entirely your decision. However, I can't really recommend any because I don't use it. Um, a thorn stripper is a really useful tool for quickly getting off thorns on roses, and also make sure you're wearing gloves because they can be so sharp. And also, I mean, another time saver is that you don't need to be picking up every single stem and cutting it individually. So generally what I'll do is I will take all the wrappings off. They will be secured with like an elastic band or a bit of string or something. Before I even open or cut the elastic band, I literally sort of flatten all the stems out, and then I literally go chop with my scissors and do it in like sort of a couple of chops. So that just saves so much time. If you was literally getting out every single stem individually and cutting it, then you would literally like be there for so much longer than what you actually do need to be. So you need to ensure that the containers that you are using to put your flowers into are sturdy enough and tall enough for the flowers you are using. So for example, delphiniums are a really tall flower. I use delphiniums a lot. They can be quite heavy. So you need to ensure that the buckets that the delphiniums are going in, for example, are tall enough that they are going to be able to support the head, and they're not going to just like droop over. If you've only got smaller buckets, it's not a problem, but just make sure they're leaning up against something. So I always find that actually flowers leaning onto other flowers or leaning onto foliage can be a really good support. But just make sure they're leaning up against something if you haven't got really tall buckets. You also need to ensure that your buckets are clean. So I would always advise that you should be cleaning your buckets. It depends how obviously regularly you're using them. If you're doing really frequent weddings, then it's probably going to be quite hard to be cleaning them after every single wedding, but I would definitely be making sure you're cleaning them like at least once a week, but rinsing them out after every wedding definitely. But yeah, just try and keep them as clean as possible, because any bacteria that's in your buckets, it is going to really damage your flowers. You also need to bear in mind the warmth of your studio. So again, this does depend where you are. In the UK, I don't really have an issue with the temperature, so I've never had to use like an air conditioned like chamber or cooling fridge, because it's never been hot enough that I have to really worry. I make all of my flowers, unless it's something that I'm building on site, the day before the wedding. So the only thing that I might make on the morning might be like the buttonholes. If it was like a really delicate flower that I was using, so say for example a sweet pea, I wouldn't make that in advance, just because they are so delicate that they need to be like in water until like literally the last minute. But generally I would make everything in advance, and as long as things are kept in water. And what is a really good tip is like candle holders, like tea light holders, sorry, make really good little vases for buttonholes. So I always make my buttonholes in advance, and then I just pop them in there. Okay, right, so I think that is all with regards to your options. So I'm now going to just see if I can share my screen with you. Okay, so it says I'm sharing my screen, so hopefully I am. Right, so this is the Florist Smart platform. So let me go to the home screen. When you log on, this is what you would be greeted with. Now, it's really important to say there are so many Dutch auctions that you can order from. I did sort of shop around with a few when I first started. However, I have stuck with Florist Smart, and as I say, I do also use Hock. I always find that Florist Smart have a lot more options with regards to what I'm looking for. I think it's probably because it's not as well used as Hock, so generally they will always have a lot more availability because not as many people are using it, but they are such good quality. So when you first log on, it's going to ask you for your delivery date. Okay, so I'm just going to click the 14th. I'm going to click for tomorrow. Oh, okay, nothing for tomorrow. Let's go Saturday. Right, okay. Saturday. Right, so it will tell you up in the corner what date you are delivering for. So again, remember that I would order for the Saturday if my wedding was on the Monday. Okay, so then you've then got the filter option of how you want the flowers to come up. So it could be either by description, so obviously that's going to start from A to Z. You can filter in color or in price. So if we go to price, that's now showing the cheapest thing ascending up to the most expensive. Okay, so for example, let's click on this. Now we can see over here that it's 15p per piece, so per stem. However, the minimum quantity that I can order of this is 240. So then, of course, if I was to press on the 1, it's then going to put 240 stems into my basket. Okay, so that is really important to note, that you have to be looking at the quantity of what's available. So under the specifications, it will tell you here how many stems they've got in stock. So if you've got like a large order to place, I would always advise looking at this one, because it might be that you need to split your order in on two different suppliers, for example. So always have a look at how much that they've got in stock. Here is the quality, as we spoke about earlier. So A1 is the top quality. The origin will be where it's grown, so that's the Netherlands. And then you'll have your supplier down there. So you will get familiar with different suppliers, and when you're frequently ordering, you will quite quickly work out like what suppliers you like. So over here, for example, filter. Right, so let's see if carnation comes up, or whether we have to put dianthus. Okay, right, so it has come up. So the carnations have come up. Yeah, so there you go. So we've still got it filtered by price. So we're starting at the cheapest. Obviously, these ones over here, they are really small headed, and these will actually be really similar to like the ones that you'd buy in a supermarket. So I'd say just be really careful when you are ordering. You want to get, let's have a look. So here, let's click on these ones, for example. They are a big headed carnation. Obviously, they are still very cheap, but that's because of the quantity that they're coming in. So they're 44p per stem, but you need to order a minimum of 200 to get that price. Whereas if we go to something a little bit more expensive, let's see if we've got the option to reduce that quantity. Okay, so 50p, for example. Okay, So here we've got the option to either order 50 or order 25. Okay. So if we go back to our filter tab, let's reset that. So over here, you've obviously got a search option where you can type in what it is that you're looking for. Or if, for example, you don't know specifically what you're looking for, you can go to like the product group and then you can sort of just make your way through them and have a look at, you know, different flowers. This is also a really good way to actually just get used to the names of flowers and ones that you like the look of. Oh. Um, Again, if you don't need to be specific with the flower, but you need to be specific with the colour, it could be that you just filter it down to a specific colour. So let's go white, for example. And then it will show you all of the white flowers available. And remember, we're still filtering this from price, from the lowest up to the most expensive. So then it, you know, again, this is a really, really good way to learn, because it might be that you don't know, or you don't have a specific criteria of what you need to use. Therefore, you can go through, you can have a look at flowers that are a good price and that will work well within your designs, and then you can pick them based on that. So that is a really nice way to work if you've got the luxury of having a bride that is not specific. Also, when it comes to like doing styled shoots and like wedding shows, then just going through and sort of filtering by price and being able to pick, you know, your flowers based on good prices, then that's quite nice as well, because you're not, you know, you haven't got to go for the most expensive ones. Okay, so this is your fresh flower options. You've then also got, on most wholesalers you will as well, you'll have an option for plants. Oh, they don't have anything available in June. Okay, they haven't got anything available on plants, so that's fair enough. And then you've got your sundry option. They'll also tell you up here how many items they have got available. So generally with your sundries, you do need to order a little bit in advance to get better. Actually, that's not changing, so fair enough. Okay, so let's just go for that date. So yeah, so here will be where I said that you can add in your ribbons, you can add in your wires, you can add in your foam. So yeah, so this is where you can just bolster up. Also, like scissors are a good one to get, like if you just need like, you know, if you want to, especially if you're doing like a workshop and you need to order like a large quantity of scissors, it might be a good idea just add a couple on if you do need to bolster up that order. The only thing with regards to the Dutch auction, I'm going to come back now to stop stop sharing. I'm going to come back now. The only thing when it comes to using the Dutch auction, some do, however Florist Smart don't have the option of allowing me to pre-order. So for example, I am having a baby in a couple of weeks, and I have got well, I say a couple of weeks, I'm due in a couple of weeks, who knows when I'm having the baby, but I've got a wedding at the end of July. So for me, it would be really useful to be able to put all of my flowers on order now, so I know that I haven't got to worry about that when the baby comes. However, Florist Smart doesn't allow me to do that. So the only thing that I can do, and which I have done in this situation, is I have my complete order list, so I know that, you know, I only need to go on and place that order. It's not like I need to sit there and work out like what I need or anything like that, because I've already done that. So that would be really good if you was able to do that. And of course, if you are going to a local wholesaler to you, you could put that order in advance. But again, you are trusting them, that they then obviously put that order in. So I wouldn't want to give that trust to anyone. But of course, that is entirely up to you. Also, with the Dutch auctions, generally they open 2 to 3 days in advance of the delivery date. So let me just go back actually to, let me just share my screen again. Allow. Let me just go back over to, although that does say pre-order, but it doesn't give you a great selection, I'll be honest. So that's why I don't. So if we click on the 27th, nothing's even coming up. Okay, yeah, they don't give you a big selection. So that's why I never use the pre-order. But for a delivery date of tomorrow, obviously there's nothing available. For a delivery date of Saturday, they do still have a lot available. And then what have they got for? Oh, okay, so Monday and Tuesday are not even open. So yeah, so at the moment then they're only allowing you to order for 2 days ahead of the date that you put that order in, if that makes sense. So yeah, you just need to plan, of course, when you need your flowers delivered, and then you need to be looking at the wholesaler's website 2 to 3 days in advance of when you need that delivery. So yeah, so I really hope that helps. As I said, if you do sign up to a Dutch auction wholesaler, you will get a complete walkthrough with a member of staff, because they obviously need to ensure that you know how to use it. They want to ensure that you're not going to make mistakes and add loads of flowers to your basket which you don't actually need. So they are a really, really good contact. So with Florist Smart, they're all the staff are based in the Netherlands. However, it's only like an hour time difference from the UK. So I have their numbers on WhatsApp. So if I have any problems or have a question, I just can WhatsApp them, and they generally come back to me really quickly. With Hoke, I do have a UK representative. So if I have a specific question, I can go directly to her. So they are really, really helpful. And the like the WhatsApp communication is really, really good if you just need you've got a quick question or something. So yes, I really hope you found this useful. If you have any questions with regards to ordering your flowers or how they come, then please by all means pop a question in the comments section, or of course go on to the Facebook group and you can ask on there, and you can tag me on there. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day or evening wherever you're watching this on catch up, and I will see you next month.